When the world goes quiet, some voices still remain. Not every soul finds peace when the clock strikes 12. There are stories hidden in the shadows, whispers drifting between the living and the forgotten. Some stories linger, some souls don't leave. Welcome to Stillness After Midnight, where every silence tells a story. If you're drawn to the mysteries that stir after dark, the voices that echo when the world sleeps, subscribe now and join us as we listen to the souls who still have something to say, because in the stillness, the truth finally speaks. You won't hear me breathing, because I no longer do. No heartbeat, no skin, no voice box, just a weightless presence suspended in a space where time is thin and memory runs like smoke through broken fingers. I am not alive, but I am not gone either. They say when a man dies, he faces judgment, some great scale measuring his sins against what little good he tried to do. If that's true, then the scale shattered the moment they lit the match that burned the family inside that house. Because I lit it, and now I wander, not in search of peace, but of understanding. Mine is a story no one wants to hear, a story the world buried under headlines, mugshots, and a courtroom sigh of relief. But the dead don't sleep just because the world forgets. I remember everything. It was winter when I died, December. The streets were iced with betrayal, the kind you only feel when you've been forgotten for too long. I was a veteran, once. Wore the uniform, carried the flag, fought in sandstorms halfway across the world for people who barely knew my name. When I came home, the parades were over. The banner faded, the hands stopped clapping, and one by one, the walls of my life crumbled. First my job, too many episodes, too much instability, they said. Then my apartment, a missed rent check. Then two, friends disappeared, family moved on. I became a ghost before I ever died. So I lived in the shadows of the city, park benches, underpasses, shelters when I could get in, alleys when I couldn't, until I found that house, a beautiful place, nestled in a quiet neighborhood that still believed in holiday lights and family dinners. It used to be mine, or at least, that's what I told myself. It looked like the house I grew up in. White porch, 2 stories, a wooden swing out front that creaked in the wind like an old lullaby. And the people inside, they looked so happy. A man, a woman, 2 kids. Laughing, moving around in warmth and light while I sat in the cold, invisible. I began to think they had taken something from me. Not just the house, but my life. Madness, right? Maybe, but madness is just a word we slap on pain that nobody wants to face. For months, I watched them. They never saw me. Just a figure beyond the gate, hidden in rags and frost. They didn't know I was a soldier. They didn't know I once held a dying friend in my arms, whispering the Lord's Prayer through clenched teeth. They didn't know I once had a daughter who called me daddy before her mother took her away. To them, I was just another broken shadow. The kind polite society likes to pretend doesn't exist, but shadows notice things. I saw the way they set their alarm, the way the father always left the back door unlocked on Tuesday nights. I saw the boy sneak cookies past bedtime. I saw the girl playing with a doll that looked exactly like the one I gave my daughter 10 years ago. That house became my obsession, my memory, my rage. And one night, I walked inside. The newspaper said it was arson, said I was mentally unstable, said it was an act of revenge against a society that failed me. They weren't wrong, but they weren't right either. The truth is more in between. It wasn't revenge, not really. It was desperation. A scream nobody heard, bursting into flame. I stood there as the fire climbed the walls like angry spirits, swallowing photographs in baby shoes. I heard the screams. I smelled the fear. and somewhere in the smoke, I thought I saw her, my daughter, crying out from a place I could never reach. But it wasn't her. It was his daughter, the man who lived there, the man who wasn't me. And in that moment, everything shattered. They caught me in a park the next morning, curled beside a garbage can, my fingers black with soot, my lips moving in prayer I no longer believed. No trial could save me. No lawyer could explain what I had become. They gave me death, and part of me welcomed it. But here's the thing they never tell you about dying. It doesn't end the story. It just peels back the curtain. Now I drift, not through heaven or hell, but something colder, something lonelier. A place made of echoes and old guilt, where souls like mine replay the worst parts of themselves over and over, until the silence finally breaks. And this is why I speak to you now, not to justify what I did, not to beg for forgiveness, but to ask the question no one ever asked me while I was alive. Why? Why does a man who once held life precious take it away from others? Why does someone who once dreamed of honor end up drenched in ash and blood? Why do we turn monsters into headlines but never ask how they were born? I don't have all the answers, but I'll tell you everything I remember. From the first time the nightmares started, to the last night I saw fire dance in the eyes of a child who didn't deserve to die. This is my story. This is my confession. And maybe, just maybe, if you listen close enough, you'll hear something human beneath the monster. I wasn't always a criminal. There was a time, dim, half buried in the mud of memory, when I stood tall in a clean uniform, with a rifle in my hands and pride swelling in my chest. They called me Sergeant Daniel Rhodes, 2nd Infantry Division, United States Army. To most, I was just another man sent off to fight a war on foreign soil. But to my brothers in the field, I was something more: a steady aim, a calm voice, a shoulder to lean on when the shells rained down and the sky turned red. I was good at what I did. Too good, because when the war ended, it didn't leave me behind. The sand never washes off, even when you're home, even when you're clean. It lingers under your skin, in the corners of your dreams, in the click of a car door that sounds too much like a rifle bolt. They gave me a parade when I returned. A few claps, a folded flag, a paper certificate tucked in a manila envelope that I would later use as a pillow. For a moment, I thought I could live again. I got a job, security guard at a downtown bank, wore a cheap badge and smiled at customers who didn't care if I lived or died. I rented a small apartment, nothing fancy. A mattress on the floor, a coffee maker, and a fridge full of microwave silence. But the quiet was the worst, because at night, the war came back, not in memories, in presence. I would wake up drenched in sweat, convinced I was back in Kandahar, the sound of mortar fire rattling my skull. Sometimes I saw faces, not in photos, in corners, in mirrors, the men I couldn't save, the ones who bled out while I pressed trembling hands to open wounds. They didn't speak. They just looked at me, as if to say, "You made it home. Why?" Then came the incident, a minor thing. They said, I tackled a man in the grocery store for dropping a can of soda behind me. I thought it was a grenade. They fired me the next day, gave me a pamphlet for a VA clinic I never visited. Maybe take some time off. Dan, they said, get your head straight, but you can't straighten something that's already cracked. It wasn't long before the money dried up. My landlord was kind, at first. You're a veteran. I respect that, he said. But kindness is a currency that always runs out. 3 months behind on rent. I found my furniture on the sidewalk one morning. A little girl from next door stared at me like I was a museum exhibit. I smiled at her. She flinched and ran away. I moved into the park, slept on a bench under a statue of a Civil War general who probably would have called me a coward. I kept a small journal with me, the last gift from my daughter before her mother remarried and changed her number. Some nights, I wrote letters to her that I never sent. Dear Emily, I'd begin. Today I made it through without crying. That's a victory, right? But they were lies. I cried every night. You learn things when you're on the streets. How to make a sandwich out of vending machine crackers. How to fake a limp so the cops don't hassle you. How to spot the families who pretend not to see you, and the ones who give you $1 with shame in their eyes. And then, one night, I found it. The house. It was 3 blocks from the park. White fence, blue shutters, a red mailbox with a smiley face sticker that made me sick. I don't know what drew me to it at first. Maybe it was the warmth leaking out of its windows. Maybe it was the smell of dinner carried by the breeze, chicken and rosemary, like my mom used to make. Or maybe it was the sound of laughter, pure, unbroken, a kind of joy I hadn't felt since the war twisted my insides into wire and smoke. They were a family, real, alive, untouched. I stood across the street for hours. The father reminded me of myself, or, at least, the man I once hoped to be. The wife had a kindness to her face that made my teeth hurt, and the kids, they were small, innocent, whole. For weeks, I returned there, at first just to watch, then to believe. I convinced myself that was my house, that they were squatting in what belonged to me. It wasn't true, but when you're cold enough, starved enough, invisible long enough, lies feel like lifelines. Then came the breaking point. It was Christmas Eve. I was walking past their house when the little girl came outside to hang a wreath on the door. She looked at me and smiled. I don't know why. Maybe she saw something human left in me. Maybe she thought I was Santa in the wrong uniform. But that smile, it shattered me. I walked away shaking, choking on tears I hadn't let fall in years. I slept under the bridge that night, curled up with a half bottle of whiskey and a scream trapped in my chest. And I dreamed of fire. When I woke up, I was different. My heart didn't beat the same. The world looked like it was underwater, slow, warped, muffled. I stood up and walked to the house, not to rob, not to beg, to reclaim, to punish them for what they had and what I had lost. That night, I found the back door unlocked, just like I knew it would be. I stepped inside. It smelled like cinnamon and pine. The fireplace crackled. A dog barked in the distance. Upstairs, I heard breathing, soft, peaceful. I held the matchbox in my hand like it was a crucifix, and for a moment, just one awful moment, I felt powerful again. They never had a chance. Neither did I. I won't tell you the details here. Not yet. Some things are too cruel to bleed out all at once. But know this. I didn't scream when they put the cuffs on me. I didn't speak at my trial. I just stared at the floor, thinking about the little girl's smile and wondering why it broke me instead of saving me. Now that I'm dead, the memories don't come in order. They come in colors, in sounds, in regrets. But I will untangle them for you, one by one, because before this story ends, you deserve to know everything. Have you ever stood in front of a mirror and seen something that wasn't you? I don't mean a trick of light. I mean a stranger staring back. After I died, the first place I opened my eyes was in front of that mirror. It wasn't made of glass. It was water, flat, black, and endless. I saw my reflection in it, but it wasn't the man they executed. It was the boy I used to be. He looked maybe 12, clean face, crooked teeth, a baseball glove hanging from his belt, and his eyes, they were alive. He stared at me with something like pity. I wanted to scream at him, tell him not to grow up, not to join the army, not to believe in medals or heroes or the American dream, but I couldn't speak. Souls don't have mouths, only memories. And the boy? He walked backward into the dark until the water swallowed his image. That was the first lesson I learned in death. You don't relive your life. You confront it. I thought I'd go straight to hell. Fire, chains, screaming souls. But what I found was much quieter. I drifted in and out of shadows. I hovered near the ruins of the house I burned, watching flies circle what was once a home. Police tape fluttered like yellow ghosts in the wind. People stopped by to leave flowers, stuffed animals, crosses, notes with phrases like "rest in peace" and "gone too soon." Nobody left anything for me. Not that I blame them, but you should know something. Something that matters. I didn't want to kill them. Not in the way you'd think. I didn't plan it. There was no manifesto, no hate in my heart, just fog. Thick, choking fog made of rage and shame and hunger and silence. When I lit the match, I swear to you, I thought I was burning my own past. The trial was fast. The media called me the veteran arsonist. The papers printed my mugshot next to the smiling family I destroyed. They showed my military records as if to say, "See? This is what war does to men." They weren't wrong, but they weren't right either. They didn't talk about the years I spent trying to get help, about the night I held a blade to my wrist in a shelter bathroom and chose to live, because I still had a daughter, somewhere. They didn't talk about the letters I wrote and never sent, or the fact that some nights I prayed not to be saved, just to be forgiven. They gave me the needle. It felt like sleep. The warden said something. I forget what, but it sounded rehearsed. I looked up at the ceiling tiles and pictured stars instead. And then, nothing, until I opened my eyes in the between. That's what I call it. It's not heaven, not hell. It's the space where forgotten souls go to watch, to feel, to regret, to relive what they chose to forget in life. I drift there now, not in hours or days. Time doesn't tick here. It pulses, and each pulse pulls me back to a moment I buried, like the hallway. It was just after midnight when I crept inside their home. The floor creaked under my boots. The walls were covered in crayon drawings and family photos. There was one that stopped me cold, a picture of the father, James, holding his little girl in his arms, her face buried in his chest. He looked so proud, the way I used to look holding Emily, before the war made my hands shake. I stared at that photo until my throat burned, and for a split second, I turned around. I could have left. I could have walked away. But then, I heard it, a baby crying, down the hall, behind a door. It wasn't loud. It wasn't scared, just calling, existing, and that existence felt like a knife in my ribs, because I realized then, they weren't just happy, they were safe, untouched, and that broke something inside me. When I visit that moment now, it plays in layers. The first layer is real, me walking into the kitchen, opening drawers, finding the matches. The second is spiritual. I see versions of myself lining the walls. A soldier, a father, a drunk, a child. They all watch me. None of them speak. They just wait. I strike the match. I see the flame reflect in the microwave door like a portal. For one final second, I hesitate. I say something, not out loud, in my soul. Please let this mean something. But it didn't. It never could. I dropped the match, and everything I hated about the world, went up with it, in death. I see the fire differently, not as heat, but as memory. Every flame carries a name, a smile, a laugh, a moment I destroyed. And they dance around me now, these burning ghosts, whispering, "You thought pain made you righteous, but you only passed it on." Sometimes I float near the prison. I watch the men still breathing behind those bars. Some are guilty, some are monsters, but some are just broken, just like I was. And I want to scream into their ears, this isn't the end, but you don't have forever. Make your soul worth saving. I don't know if I'll ever be forgiven, but I've started to believe that's not the point. Maybe my job now is to tell you the truth, the full, ugly, tender truth of who I was and what I did. Not for me, but for you. Because maybe, just maybe, if you understand how a man unravels, you'll help someone else stitch themselves together before it's too late. The cold is softer now, less like punishment, more like memory. And in this weightless place between moments, I feel something stir, not rage, not guilt, but something gentler, something I had forgotten. Love, not the kind that burns and takes, the kind that holds. Her name was Emily Claire Bennett, born on a rainy Tuesday in late March. She came into the world screaming like she was already warning us, don't mess this up. And I tried not to. God, I tried. When Melissa placed her in my arms for the first time, I forgot the war. I forgot blood, noise, commands. There was only her. She was so small, so light, as if holding her meant holding a secret the world hadn't earned yet. Her eyes, in a blend of her mother's hazel and something wild from me, blinked up at me like she already knew I'd be trouble. I remember whispering, you're the only thing I'll ever get right. That was a promise, one I couldn't keep. We weren't a perfect family, but there were days that came close. Melissa would hum in the kitchen. Emily would dance barefoot on the couch cushions, arms out like wings. And I would sit on the floor, watching them like a man trying to memorize paradise before it vanished. Those were the good days, before the noise came back, before I started locking myself in the garage with a bottle instead of joining them for dinner, before Emily learned how to walk on eggshells around me. I came back from Iraq with all my limbs intact, but something inside me didn't return. Melissa said she saw it in my sleep first, the way I gasped, flinched, whispered names she didn't recognize. Then came the silences, the quick temper, the way I'd stare out the window for hours, unmoving, like I was waiting for something to explode. Emily was too young to name it, but she felt it. Children always do. She stopped running to the door when I came home, stopped asking me to play, stopped telling me about school. I remember one night, she must have been 7. She came to me with a drawing. It was a stick figure family. Mommy, Emily, and someone scribbled in all black. I asked, who's this? She said, that's you, Daddy. You're always in the shadows. I laughed then. Not because it was funny, but because it hurt too much not to. Melissa did everything she could to keep the house standing. She begged me to get help. I promised her I would. But pride is a quiet poison. It doesn't scream. It whispers. You don't need help. You're a soldier. You survived worse. So I drank. And when the drinking stopped numbing, I yelled. Never at them, not directly. But fear doesn't need to be shouted to be heard. The night Melissa asked me to leave, she didn't cry. She just said, I need to protect Emily. That was the first time I realized I had become the danger, not the shield, the storm. I packed my bag in silence. Emily stood in the hallway in her pajamas, clutching the teddy bear I gave her when she was 3. Its ear was chewed, one eye missing. She didn't say a word. She just watched me walk out the door. In the years that followed, I lived like a ghost, floated from job to job, couch to shelter, bottle to bottle. I left voicemails, sent birthday cards I couldn't afford. None of them came back. None of them were answered. It was like they had buried me before I died. And maybe they were right too. I tried to justify it all to myself, told myself I left to protect them. that Emily was better off without a broken man hovering over her life like a dark cloud. But at night, when the city was quiet and the walls pressed in, I let the truth bleed through. I abandoned them, not because I didn't love them, but because I loved them too much to make them watch me fall apart. In this place, this between, time folds in strange ways, and sometimes I see her, not as she was, but as I remembered. She's 10, sitting on a swing in our old backyard. The wind catches her hair and she calls out, "Higher, Daddy!" Higher! I run behind her, pushing gently. She laughs, a sound like sunlight. In that moment, I feel alive again. Then I blink, and she's gone. Only the creaking of the swing remains. I used to think being a father meant protecting your child from everything. Now I know. It means showing up, even when you're broken. Especially when you're broken. I failed at that, and no amount of death will let me forget it. Melissa. She deserved more than I gave her. She held on longer than she should have. When I close my eyes, I remember the curve of her back as she stood at the sink, washing dishes with trembling hands. The way she'd flinch when I dropped a glass or slammed a door by accident. She never said it out loud, but she was afraid of me. That's the wound I carry deeper than any war scar, because love shouldn't come with fear. One winter night, a year before the fire, I saw them, Melissa and Emily, at a grocery store. I was outside, half frozen, holding a cardboard sign that read, "Homeless vet, anything helps." They didn't see me. Emily was older then, taller, her cheeks rounder. She laughed at something Melissa said and tucked her arm into her mother's. And just for a moment, I let myself believe they were happy. That maybe, just maybe, losing me was their salvation. But even then, a flicker of something dark curled in my chest. A voice that hissed, "That was your life, that house, that warmth. They replaced you. They erased you." And I listened to that voice. That voice became fire. Now, I drift, alone in a space that holds every mistake like a shrine. And sometimes, rarely, I feel her. Emily. She's not a child anymore. She's a woman now, a stranger with my eyes. Does she think of me? Does she tell people her father was a soldier? Or does she say nothing? Let them assume he's dead or worthless? Maybe both are true. In the end, this isn't a ghost story. It's a love story. A broken, misshapen kind of love. The kind forged in failure and remembered through regret. But it's love all the same. And if my voice carries beyond this void, if it reaches Emily, wherever she is, let her know this. I loved her. More than I knew how to say. More than I knew how to survive. And I am sorry for everything. The past doesn't let go. It follows like smoke in your lungs, like a scent that clings to your skin even after the fire is gone. And sometimes it wears another man's face. It happened on a Tuesday, or whatever passes for Tuesday in this place where time folds in on itself. I wasn't looking for pain, but pain found me anyway. I drifted down familiar streets, old, cracked sidewalks I used to walk as a man. I recognized the way the autumn leaves curled on the pavement, how the wind whispered through the chain-link fences. Everything was eerily the same, but I wasn't part of it anymore. I was a memory walking among the living. Then I saw the house, my house, or what used to be, white picket fence, now painted navy blue, new shutters, a porch swing, fresh flowers planted in the garden. Melissa once let die during one of our worst winters. It didn't look like a home I'd ever lived in. It looked like a home that had healed without me. The laughter was what stopped me cold. Emily's laugh, older, deeper, but still hers. It rose from the backyard like sunlight through cold fog. I floated toward it, drawn like a moth, and there he was, the man, tall, clean-shaven, wore a button-up shirt tucked into jeans like someone who had never missed a mortgage payment or lost a war. He was holding the end of a rope as Emily swung from a tree. She was smiling, carefree, like she didn't remember the broken man who used to live in her shadows. I should have felt joy, relief, but what I felt was jealousy, ugly and raw, pressing into every crevice of my soul. He was laughing with her. He called her kiddo. She called him dad. My breath caught in my throat. If I had one. Dad. The word hit harder than any bullet ever had. I wanted to scream, to tear down the neatness, the calm, the illusion. But there's no voice in this place, just thought, and ache, and memory. So I stood there, invisible, forgotten, watching another man live my life better than I ever could. Melissa stepped outside with 2 glasses of lemonade. She smiled at him. He kissed her cheek like it was nothing, like it was normal. And for them, maybe it was. I was the storm they'd weathered. He was the calm that followed. I drifted closer, into the house, through the walls like breath. It was all warm, lived in. Photos hung where mine used to be. Not a single one of me, not even of us, the family we once were. Just them, smiling, whole. I found her old bedroom, Emily's. The walls were painted lavender now. No more peeling posters or scribbles. Just books, a guitar in the corner, a college brochure on the desk. She was becoming someone I never got to meet, someone I could have helped shape if I hadn't been so lost. I stared at the bed and remembered the nights I used to tuck her in. She'd beg me to check the closet for monsters. So I did. Every time. Even when I was drunk. Even when my hands trembled and my knees barely held. She believed I could protect her. And now, she had a new protector. One who didn't flinch at shadows. One who didn't disappear. I heard them laugh again downstairs. Something in me cracked. This wasn't just about losing them. It was about being replaced, forgotten, deleted. I hovered in the hallway, staring at a framed photo on the wall. Emily, beaming in a graduation gown. Melissa beside her, and him, his arm around both of them, like he belonged there, like he always had. I didn't even know his name, but I gave him one in my head, the Stealer, because that's what he was, wasn't he? He didn't just step in, he took over. He filled the space I left, the space I ruined, and made it look effortless. Was this how it ends for men like me? Not with fire, not with sirens, but with silence, with the slow erasure of everything we ever were. I tried to remember the last real conversation I had with Melissa. It was years before the fire. We sat in the car, outside the divorce lawyer's office. She didn't look at me when she said, "Someday, Emily's going to need a man in her life who doesn't scare her." I told her I could change. She said, "It's been 5 years of you saying that." And that was it. She walked away. And now, another man was living the life I promised to fix. I floated back outside, away from the warmth, the light, the illusion of normalcy. The sun was setting, the air turned cool, and something heavy settled into my chest. Not anger, not hatred, something closer to truth. He hadn't stolen anything. I gave it away, piece by piece, with every broken promise, with every drunken night, with every moment I chose silence instead of vulnerability. He wasn't the villain. I was. Not because I hurt them directly, but because I didn't know how not to. I hovered above the street, watching their home fade behind me, and for the first time since my death, I felt a strange kind of peace, a small, painful comfort. They were okay. They were alive. They were moving forward without me. Yes, but still forward. And maybe that was enough. Back in this hollow place between now and never, I whispered to whatever force holds souls like mine, Let them keep their peace. Let them remember the good, not the ruin. And let her know, if she ever wonders why I vanished, it wasn't because I didn't love her. It's because I loved her too much to stay broken in front of her forever. They say fire cleanses, that it purifies. But that night, it didn't feel holy. It felt like judgment. And I was the executioner. I hadn't planned to go back, not to that place. But souls like mine don't move forward. We circle, we haunt, and eventually we return, even to our own damnation. It was an old craftsman house near the edge of town. Red bricks, wooden porch, small garden out front where someone used to grow tomatoes in summer. They called it the Rowan's place. To me, it was the scene of my final breath, and theirs. I don't remember lighting the match, not in the way most people remember actions. What I remember is feeling it, that moment before, the trembling, the sweat, the dry mouth, the sense that the world was tilting and everything inside me was coming apart. It was never about fire. It was about loss. They were a family, quiet, ordinary. A mother, father, 2 boys. The younger one had a stutter. The older played baseball. They never meant me harm, but in my broken mind, they took something I couldn't name. See, after the eviction, I lost more than a roof. I lost my anchor to this world. I wandered streets like a ghost even before I died, sleeping in parks, drinking from bottle caps, talking to people who weren't there. But when I passed their house, warm light glowing from the windows, laughter spilling out into the cold night, I felt robbed. It wasn't fair. Why did they get to live in my home? It wasn't really mine, not legally, but in my heart, it was the one I'd marked in desperation. I thought, they stole my second chance. The voices in my head didn't help. They whispered like wind between the ribs. She moved on. They all did. They left you. They don't care if you rot. And when I stood outside their house that night, soaking in rain, stomach empty, heart dry, the voices gave me one command: take it back. I broke the basement window. I remember the crunch of glass under my boots, the way the gasoline smelled, sharp, metallic, final, and then the match, a single spark. They say flames are alive, that they breathe and feed, but that night, they screamed. The fire wailed as it ate the walls, the curtains, the photographs. It howled up the stairs, licking the hallway like a beast unchained. I didn't stay to watch. I ran, into the night, into the silence. But silence never came. Their screams followed me. Even now, I still hear them. The mother trying to get to her sons. The father crashing through smoke, shouting names. The little boy with the stutter, calling for help that never came. And me? I sat 2 blocks away, hands over my ears, rocking like a child, not praying, not crying, just empty. They found me 2 days later, still in the same clothes, reeking of smoke and sweat. I confessed, didn't fight it, didn't understand it either. They said I smiled during questioning. I don't remember smiling. I remember numbness, like I was watching someone else from behind glass, like it had already happened long ago, and I was just catching up. The trial was quick. Media called me the ash maker, said I was a monster, said I was mentally unstable. They weren't wrong, but they weren't right either. Truth doesn't live in headlines. It lives in haunting. They sentenced me to death. Lethal injection. I didn't fight that either. What was there to live for? My daughter didn't write. My wife didn't come. Even in my final hour, I was alone. The needle went in. My last thought, not regret, not fear. It was, they'll never know why. And maybe that's what this place is. A second trial, not to justify, not to excuse, but to tell the truth, even if it's too late for it to matter. I wasn't born evil. I was made of wounds I never treated. A soldier who never came home, a husband who lost his compass, a father too afraid to face the mirror. And the fire? It wasn't just for them, it was for everything I couldn't fix. People think punishment ends with death, but I'm here to tell you, hell is memory. Hell is watching what you destroyed and finally understanding why. Now, every time I pass by that corner where the house used to be, an empty lot now, fenced off and full of weeds, I see the shadows. 2 boys in the window, a mother reaching, a father shouting. They don't scream anymore. They just look at me, silently, not angry, not vengeful, just sad, like they're waiting for me to understand. And I do. God help me, I do. They didn't even put up a fight when they found me. I was crouched under the I-75 overpass, staring at a crushed pack of cigarettes, trying to remember which brand my father used to smoke. Funny the things that come back when everything else is gone. 2 cops approached. One had his gun drawn. The other held out a raincoat like I was something fragile. I didn't say a word. Didn't need to. The fire had already done all the talking. My clothes smelled like guilt, and my eyes must have told them the rest. They cuffed me, gently, almost like they felt sorry. I wonder if they saw it, the shaking in my fingers, the blankness in my stare. That wasn't from fear. That was me trying to figure out whether I was still real. The ride to the station was quiet. I remember the rain on the window, the way it made everything outside blur into watercolor. I watched the city slip by, its neon signs, its diners, its alleys, and I thought, you don't belong anywhere anymore. And I didn't. They interrogated me for hours. I think time didn't mean much by then. They asked questions like they were checking boxes. Where did you get the gasoline? Why did you choose that house? What were you thinking? Thinking? That was the problem. I wasn't, or maybe I was, but not in a way they could ever understand. My answers were a mess of half-truths and ghost thoughts. I told them about the voices. I told them about the dreams. I told them how the house used to be mine, even though it never really was. I don't think they understood. One detective called me pathetic. Another called me a monster. Both were probably right. They sent in a shrink next. Some government-appointed psychologist with soft hands and soft eyes. He wanted to talk about Iraq, about my deployments, about what it felt like to come home to nothing. He asked about my daughter, and I remember something inside me recoiling like he'd touched a bruise too deep. She stopped calling, I told him. After the second rehab, she didn't even send a card. He nodded like that made sense, like he'd read about that in some textbook. I wanted to scream at him. You don't know what it's like to be forgotten by your own blood. But I didn't scream. I just folded into silence, like always. Eventually, they built their case: arson, 4 counts of murder, malice aforethought. The prosecutor said I had every opportunity to stop and didn't. He painted me as methodical, cold, detached, said I walked away while they burned, said I never once called 911. He was right. I didn't. But not because I wanted them to die, because in that moment, I didn't believe I was part of the living anymore. My public defender was young, too young. She wore baggy blazers and had this nervous tic where she'd tug at her sleeves every time she stood to speak. She tried, God bless her, she really did. She brought up PTSD, brought up homelessness, brought up the VA system and how many like me fell through the cracks. She painted me as a man shattered by war and forgotten by the country he bled for. It didn't matter. The jury didn't see a soldier. They saw a headline: arsonist, family killer, unhinged veteran. No one wants to sympathize with a ghost wearing human skin. During the trial, my wife never came. Not once. My daughter. I didn't expect her to. Part of me hoped. Part of me prayed. But the pew where she would have sat stayed empty. Like it was holding space for a version of me that never came back from overseas. The media latched onto the story. The ash maker, they called me. Said I turned my trauma into a weapon. Talk shows debated whether I deserved the death penalty. One radio host called me America's shame personified. I remember laughing at that, not because it was wrong, but because it was finally honest. I was the shame no one wanted to look at. The walking reminder of what happens when the system breaks a man and then walks away. The verdict came quick. Guilty on all counts. No recommendation for leniency. The judge looked at me like I was a puzzle missing too many pieces. He read my sentence like he was ordering a sandwich. Execution by lethal injection. Date to be determined. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't feel anything at all. People think death sentences are dramatic, that you scream, or fall to your knees, or swear your innocence. But the truth is, if you've been dead inside long enough, it just feels like paperwork. They sent me to a holding facility while the appeals process went through. Months blurred. Seasons changed outside those concrete walls. But inside, time stood still. I spent most days staring at the ceiling, tracing cracks like road maps to places I'd never go again. Other inmates kept their distance. Some whispered. A few offered cigarettes through the bars, not out of kindness, but curiosity. Like they wanted to touch the edge of madness without falling in. At night, the dreams got worse. The little boy with the stutter would appear at the end of my bunk, his pajamas scorched, his eyes hollow. He never spoke, just stared, and I'd wake up in cold sweat, mouth open, heart racing, remembering that it was me who lit the fire. I tried writing letters to my daughter, to my wife, to the families I destroyed, but the words wouldn't come, or when they did, they felt empty, like carving apologies into stone and expecting them to bleed. One day the chaplain came to visit. He was older, bald, with kind eyes and an understanding voice. "Do you want to make peace with God?" he asked. I looked at him for a long time before answering. "I think God stopped looking for me a long time ago." He smiled sadly. "Maybe. Or maybe you're the one who stopped answering." That stayed with me, more than the judge's sentence, more than the jury's glares. Because deep down, I knew he was right. When the final day came, they gave me a last meal. I asked for nothing fancy, just a cup of black coffee and a peanut butter sandwich. Reminded me of when my daughter was 5, and we used to picnic by the lake. I'd bring the peanut butter. She'd bring the jelly. We'd laugh about whose was better. I closed my eyes and pretended I could still taste hers. They walked me to the chamber. Cold, sterile, a room made for forgetting. I laid down willingly. The warden asked if I had any final words. I thought about all the things I could say, all the things I should say, but in the end, I only whispered one name, Emily, and then darkness. Except, not really, because I woke up here, wherever here is, between breath and silence, between memory and truth, not heaven, not hell, just in between, watching, remembering, and, at long last, telling the story no one ever wanted to hear. I don't remember writing the whole thing. Bits of it, maybe, scratched onto a scrap of notebook paper with a dull pencil, my hands shaking, the words more like blood than ink. I kept it tucked in the seam of my mattress back in holding. The guards never found it. I think they stopped looking after a while, stopped caring, or maybe some things just hide from the living. Now, in this place between, it's the only thing I can hold. Everything else, my uniform, my scars, the steel walls, they faded into the void. But the letter glows. I find it floating in the air like it remembers me, like it knows I never got to finish. The handwriting is rough, shaky, but it's mine. and every word is a wound. Dear Emily, if you're reading this, it means I found the courage to write again. I don't know where to begin, because I lost track of when I stopped being your father and became a stranger who haunts your memories. I pause. Even here, even as a soul, it hurts to read those lines. The truth of them cuts deeper than the fire ever could. Do you remember when you were 5 and you asked me why the moon followed our car? You thought it was your guardian. I told you it watched over brave girls. You laughed so hard that night I thought the world would crack open and let all the light in. I wish I could have frozen that version of me, the one who still had something to protect. The paper vibrates with the memory, her small fingers wrapped around mine, her voice asking if the moon had a name. Maybe it's watching you too. Daddy. God, what did I do to that little girl? I missed your 7th birthday. I missed your graduation. I missed the part where you stopped calling me dad and started calling me him. I missed everything because I thought pain was something I had to carry alone. That if I said it out loud, it would make me weak. But silence didn't make me strong. It made me hollow. The letter folds in the air like it's breathing. I can feel her face in my memory, older now, maybe 20, maybe 30. I never knew. I died not knowing, but I remember the last time I saw her. It was raining. Of course it was raining. She stood at the edge of the shelter parking lot. I had just gotten kicked out again. She had brought me a coat, one of mine from before, from when I still had a job and a front door. She didn't say much, just handed it to me. I remember thanking her, then trying to hug her. She stepped back, and then she said, "This is the last time, Dad." I watched her walk away, coatless in the cold. She kept her word. Emily, I saw your eyes that day. They weren't angry. They were tired. And I made you carry a war you never fought. I became something you had to survive. And I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve the man I became. But I hope, somewhere deep down, you remember the one I used to be. The one who made shadow puppets on your bedroom wall and told you monsters were just lost dreams. The letter trembles. So do I. I wonder where she is now. Did she keep her mother's last name? Did she ever open the envelope they handed her after my death? Or did she toss it, unopened, into a drawer with all the other ghosts? I wouldn't blame her. Even I can barely look at what I left behind. They'll tell you I was a monster. Maybe I was, but I swear to you, Emily, I didn't light that fire because I hated them. I lit it because I couldn't see the line between past and present anymore. The house wasn't theirs in my mind, it was mine. It was the last place I ever heard your voice through a door. And I know that's not an excuse. There is no excuse. There's only pain, and the way it echoes. I trace the edges of the letter like it's her face. The paper is soft, fragile, like her hair the first time I held her in the hospital. I remember the smell of talcum powder and cheap coffee, her tiny heartbeat against my chest. The nurse had said I looked scared, but I wasn't. I was in awe. I was watching a piece of my soul sleep. And now I'm watching a piece of my guilt bleed across paper. Maybe one day you'll understand, or maybe not. Maybe you've built a life so far from me that my shadow doesn't reach it anymore. If that's true, I hope it stays that way. I hope your days are filled with laughter and your nights with warmth. But if you ever feel a cold breeze when the window's closed or hear the whisper of your name in the dark, it's just me, still watching, still loving you. The letter ends there. No signature, no date, just the ache of a father who ran out of time. In this place between, there's no fire, no steel, no echo of gavel or gunshot, just me and the letter. And the question I keep asking the silence, did she read it? Maybe somewhere, across the divide, she found the envelope. Maybe her fingers hesitated at the flap. Maybe she cried, or maybe she didn't. Maybe she still hates me. I would understand. But I hope, dear God, I hope some part of her felt the love behind those lines. The love I buried beneath so many layers of anger and withdrawal and addiction. A love that never left, even when I did. Now, the letter begins to fade, slowly, like it's been read, or forgiven, or maybe just finished. And I feel lighter, not redeemed, not cleansed, but heard, even if it was only by the stars, or the wind, or the darkness that listens when no one else will. It begins with the smell, not smoke, not yet. No, it's something else. Oil, gasoline, sharp and sour like regret. The scent wraps around my ghost like a noose. I don't know where I am at first. The world around me flickers like a broken projector, hazy and shifting. Then the shapes begin to form. The outline of a porch, crooked steps, a chain-link fence rusted at the edges. A house. Their house. I feel it before I see it. The sickness, the static crawling under my skin. Someone is making me watch this. I want to run. I want to scream. But ghosts don't get to run, and no one hears the screaming. So I watch. There I am, alive, real, shivering beneath the streetlight, clutching a red gas can in my left hand. My other hand trembles in my coat pocket, fingers wrapped around a lighter I've flicked too many times in too many alleyways. I look older than I remember. Smaller, too. My boots are soaked with gutter water. My shoulders are hunched like I'm trying to disappear into myself. But my eyes... God, my eyes. Vacant. Unfocused. Like no one is home inside that skull. Like I'd already died long before the fire. I trail behind him, behind me, as he approaches the side of the house. The backyard is still, quiet, the neighborhood asleep. Only the porch light glows faintly, like the house itself is unaware of what's coming. I see the window first, a cracked pane just above the crawl space, and then I see them, the family, a woman inside, folding laundry on a worn couch, a toddler playing with blocks, a man walking into the kitchen holding 2 mugs of cocoa. They don't know. Of course they don't. They never had the chance. My ghost self staggers. I reach out to stop him, my living self, but my hands pass through his coat like fog. He kneels by the window, unscrews the gas cap. I remember this part. I remember the way the cold made the plastic stiff, how the fumes hit the back of my throat like acid. I remember thinking, this is mine. That house is mine. They took it. They didn't, though. They bought it fair, years after the foreclosure, after the bank stripped me bare and spat me into the street. But in my mind, they were trespassers, invaders, strangers laughing in the halls where my daughter once sang off-key lullabies. I remember the lie I told myself. I'm taking back what's mine. I didn't think about the people, just the house, the walls, the echo. But now, seeing them through the window, I can't look away. The toddler, his name was Micah. I learn now. He giggles as the man tickles his belly. The woman smiles, brushing hair from her face. They look like every picture I tore up in my better days. My breathing, if that's what ghosts can call it, gets sharp, ragged. My heart clenches, even though it hasn't beaten in years. Then, the sound, the click of the lighter. My living self strikes it once, twice, a third time. The flame sputters to life. He holds it out, and in that moment, I scream, not with words, but with soul, with everything I am. Every fragment of guilt, sorrow, desperation. I throw myself at him, at the lighter, at the gas pooling under the window. But I'm a wisp, a watcher. My hands pass through fire like wind through silk. And then, flames. They rush upward, greedy and alive. A demon birthed from my grief. The gas ignites in a burst that shatters the window. Screams follow. Inside, the family scrambles. Smoke pours in, thick and black. The toddler cries. The woman stumbles, coughing. The man runs for a fire extinguisher, but it's too late. The fire is inside now, in the furniture, in the curtains, in the lungs of those who never knew me. I turn away, but the scene won't let me. I'm forced to watch as they claw at windows, as they shout for help that never comes. As the house I once called home becomes a coffin of my own making, and then stillness. The fire fades. The air is filled with silence and ash. I drop to my knees, or something like knees, as the ghost of my body slumps to the curb. My living self just sits there, blinking at the flames, as if he's watching someone else's nightmare. I remember that moment too. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even shaking. I was empty. And now, watching from the other side, I finally understand what I did, not just to them, but to myself. In the distance, a new figure approaches, not one of the dead, not a ghost, something older, something colder. It takes the shape of a man in a dark coat. His face is blurry, as if reality can't fully define him, but his voice, it cuts through me like ice. You remember now? I can't speak. My throat is full of fire and shame. Good. You needed to. I look up. My voice comes out cracked, like broken glass. Why show me this again? Haven't I suffered enough? The figure tilts its head. You think this is punishment? I nod. No, it says softly. This is truth. Most souls flee from it. Few ever walk back into the moment they shattered the world. It gestures to the charred ruin of the house. And fewer still feel what you feel now. I want to curl into nothing, to sink into the void and never rise again. But then I feel something else. A whisper, a weight. 3 souls, watching me. The family, Micah, his parents. They're not speaking, not accusing, just witnessing. I turn to them. I want to beg for forgiveness, but no words form, just tears that don't fall. And then the woman nods. Once, not in absolution, not in kindness, but in understanding. And they vanish, gone to wherever souls go when they've left the fire behind. The figure remains. He kneels beside me. You've seen it, the truth. Now comes the question. I look at him. What question? He stares through me. What will you do with it? The words echo long after the shadowed figure has spoken them. I stand, if you can call this spectral weightlessness standing, on the charred front lawn of the house I burned down. My soul feels heavier now, as if memory carries mass here. Every breathless moment I was forced to relive presses against my chest like a stone that refuses to move. What choice do I have? I ask the figure, though I already know the answer. He doesn't respond, not right away. Instead, he walks through the air like it's solid, tracing the edge of the ruined foundation where their lives ended and mine, in a way, truly began to rot. Finally, he says, that depends on whether you still believe your story ends here. My story should end here, I murmur. It should have ended the night I lit the fire. And yet, here you are, speaking, feeling, remembering. He kneels in the soot and picks up something small. I float closer and see it's a child's toy, a melted dinosaur, its plastic face twisted mid-roar. Micah's. The figure studies it like it holds a sacred truth. Souls that linger aren't condemned by punishment, but by unfinished choices. You didn't just kill a family that night. You severed the final thread to yourself. I close my eyes, but the dark here doesn't protect me anymore. In the dark, I see her, my daughter, small and sharp-eyed, curled on a mattress in a shelter while I slept on concrete outside. I had nothing left to give her, just an empty stomach and a head full of rage. She asked me once, "Daddy, when will we go home again?" And I told her the most dangerous thing I'd ever said. "Soon." "Then what is it you think I can do now?" I asked the figure. "I'm already damned. I've already seen what I did." He stands and looks straight through me. "You can witness more." My chest tightens. "There's more." He gestures to the horizon. The blackened sky parts like smoke in reverse. A new scene forms, not of fire, but of cold steel, bars, chains, cement floors, a prison. I see myself again, older now. Inmate 43291, hollow-cheeked and unshaven, waiting for death. This memory is quieter. No flames, no screams, just a man, shackled in his own regret. "You didn't run after the fire," the figure says. "You didn't hide. You turned yourself in." I remember that night, after the flames died. I walked to the nearest police station and told them everything. I didn't resist, didn't argue. I handed them the lighter like a man surrendering a crucifix to a storm. "Why did you do it?" the officer asked. And I said, "Because I can't bring them back, but I can stop myself from doing it again." And I meant it. I really did. I watched myself walk into the trial. I heard the sentence, "death by lethal injection." I remember thinking how oddly comforting it was. A scheduled end. Something solid in a life full of ghosts. But that comfort didn't last long, because 2 weeks before the sentence was carried out, something happened. The figure waves his hand again. Another memory returns. I'm in a visitation booth, separated by glass, and on the other side, her, my daughter, older now, maybe 17. She's wearing a second-hand coat and biting her lip like she used to when she was nervous. Her eyes lock onto mine, and for a second, I forget how far I've fallen. "You look tired," she says. I nod. "I deserve to be. I found you," she whispers. "I needed to see you before they kill me." I finish for her. She flinches, but doesn't look away. Then she says something that still haunts me more than fire or blood. "I don't forgive you, Daddy, but I still love you." That sentence split me in half. "I saw her once," I whispered to the figure. "Before they strapped me down, I thought that was the last time I'd feel anything human. And yet," he says again, "you're still here." We return to the burned foundation. The ghost of the house of my crime remains still. The melted dinosaur rests on a pile of soot like a forgotten relic. The figure speaks again. "You asked what you could do. Now I ask you something different." He points to the distance. There, just beyond the horizon, something glows, a soft white gate in a sea of darkness. It hums not with warmth, but with truth. "Do you want to leave?" he asks. I know what he means. Do I want to move on? To rest? And for the first time, I don't have an immediate answer. "I want to make it right," I say. "You can't undo what you did," he says gently. "But maybe I can witness it. All of it. Carry the memory forward. Speak it. Show others what it means to fall so far you lose yourself, and what it means to feel again after the ruin." He tilts his head, as if satisfied. "And that," he says, "is the beginning of redemption. Not forgiveness, not erasure, but awareness." I look around. The scene begins to dissolve. The burned house fades, the streetlight blinks away, and with it, the weight on my chest eases, just slightly. I stand in the void again, alone, but not empty. I whisper, "I was a father. I was a soldier. I was a broken man. And I became a killer." Then louder, "But I am still a soul, and I will not vanish in silence. They say time heals, But they don't speak for the dead. The figure is gone now. I'm alone. No voices, no burning homes. Just this strange plain between memory and consequence, where the air tastes like regret and the ground ripples beneath me like the surface of dark water. I begin to walk, though I don't know where I'm going. With every step, the air thickens. The shadows shift. They're not just shadows anymore. They're shapes. Watching, breathing, waiting. I take another step, and a voice cuts through the silence. You left me behind. I turn. My chest seizes. She's there. Not the little girl I saw in the shelter. Not the teenager who looked at me through prison glass, but the woman she would have become, what I never lived to see. Strong, wounded, beautiful, in that haunted way people wear when they've learned to carry too much pain in the too little time. My daughter, except not exactly. Something about her isn't alive, not anymore. Her voice echoes too clearly. Her feet don't touch the ground. Her eyes burn, not with anger, but with absence. Are you? I begin, but she cuts me off. No, I'm not dead. Not really. Then she takes a step closer, and I feel it. A soul half broken. A life split in two by the weight of a father's crime. I dreamed of you for years, she says. Nightmares, mostly. Sometimes I'd hear the fire before I saw your face. I'm sorry. Don't. Her voice hardens. You don't get to say that yet. I lower my gaze. I looked for you, she continues. Not because I wanted to forgive you. I just needed to understand. How a man who tucked me in every night could become someone the news called a monster. Her breath catches. I told myself it was the war, that the world broke you and forgot to put you back together. She's trembling now. But the truth? I was afraid. Afraid I had your blood. That maybe something in me could snap the same way. I try to speak, but my throat, the illusion of it, tightens. I spent my 20s trying to prove I wasn't you, she says. Volunteered at shelters, protested death row executions. I even helped a vet find housing once, just because he reminded me of your old coat. She smiles, but it's not joy. It's grief dressed as irony. But no matter what I did, I was always your daughter. She pauses, then takes a deep breath. And then, I stopped running. I stopped trying to be the opposite of you, because I realized that wasn't justice. That was fear. Tears fall from eyes that shouldn't cry in this place. You died before I could decide whether to forgive you, but I'm here now, not to set you free, not to punish you either, just to say this. She steps forward, and suddenly, I feel it. Warmth. Real warmth. It spills from her hand into mine like morning sun through broken windows. I am still your daughter, and I lived. She fades, slowly, like a candle burning through its final breath, and then I'm alone again. But not empty. The silence doesn't last. Another voice rises, low and broken. Why us? The air twists again, and I find myself in a living room, half lit, cold. A woman sits on the floor, clutching a framed photo of two children. The mother, the one whose screams I silenced. She doesn't see me, but she speaks to me anyway. We gave you that blanket, she whispers. Remember? When you slept behind the church, I sent Micah out with soup, and you said, thank you. I remember. God, I remember. You looked so tired, so human. She shakes her head. And that night, when the window broke, when the fire crept into our lungs, I remember thinking, it can't be him. Her hands tremble on the frame. But it was. She looks up, not at me, but through me, as if she can't quite bring herself to meet the eyes of the thing that unmade her life. My babies never even got to scream, she says. They just disappeared. I fall to my knees. The weight of it crushes me. She stands, slowly, and the room begins to dissolve again, leaving behind only the echo of her final words. May you carry their silence forever. Then comes the father, the husband, standing on the porch of a burned-out shell of a home. He doesn't say much, just lights a cigarette and stares into the ash. He's been dead for years. Heart failure, the paper said. But I wonder if it was grief that killed him. When he finally speaks, his voice is jagged. I had a gun. I freeze. That night, in the closet, I thought about using it. But I didn't want the kids to see me holding something like that. I wanted them to grow up safe, strong. He turns, and for the first time, he looks directly at me. I should have pulled the trigger. And then he's gone. No fade. Just gone. Like smoke when the wind picks up. The shadows around me twist tighter now. They don't just watch, they remember. Every soul I hurt, every life I touched with blood-stained hands. They swirl, not to attack, but to test. They ask me without words. Do you understand now? I do. Will you run from it again? I won't. Then carry it. Not in chains. In truth, the void doesn't punish me. It does something worse. It leaves me to remember. A light stirs on the edge of my vision, faint, pale, like the first breath before dawn. I know I could follow it. I know it might lead me somewhere softer, but I don't move toward it. Not yet. I sit in the ash of all I've done, and I listen to the souls I left behind, to the ones I carry now. And for the first time in my death, I weep. They say every fire has a spark, but sometimes the spark isn't a matchstick. Sometimes it's a memory. It's strange what comes back to you when you're dead. Not just moments, but feelings. The weight of a look, the smell of rust, the silence before someone you love walks out and doesn't come back. I'm standing now, in uniform. Desert camo, dust on my boots, helmet under one arm, a photograph tucked inside the vest over my chest. It's the same picture my daughter held in chapter 3. My little girl, beaming. My wife with that laugh she used to hide behind her hand. The photograph smells like sunscreen and innocence. But this place, this memory, it reeks of blood and copper. I'm back there again, somewhere in Kandahar, or maybe Fallujah. They all bled into each other after a while. The heat presses in like a second skin. Men shout, shells drop, and beside me lies the first body I ever watched go still. One of just a kid, 19. I remember kneeling by him. He looked like he was sleeping, except for the open mouth and the way one eye refused to close. His name was Paulie. He liked old country music and told bad jokes about raccoons. I never laughed. I wish I had. That night, after they zipped him into a black bag and the chopper took him away, I sat alone on my cot and stared at the ceiling until sunrise. I didn't cry. Not yet. Something in me just, shut off. Click. Like a light switch. The next few weeks blurred. IEDs, screams, civilians crying over the wrong corpses. One morning, I brushed my teeth next to a puddle of someone's blood and didn't blink. That was the moment I knew something inside me had cracked. Not shattered, but shifted. I started drinking when I got back. Not heavy at first, just enough to slow down the reel of memories that played every time I closed my eyes. My wife noticed. She never said it like an accusation, just with concern. Quiet words like, "You okay?" Or, "You were yelling again last night." I'd kiss her on the forehead and say something like, "Just dreams." She wanted me to talk, to see someone, but you know how we are. Soldiers, men, stupid creatures with rusted pride. So I smiled through the PTSD questionnaires, answered no to have you ever considered hurting yourself or others, and yes to do you feel supported by your family. I told the VA what they needed to hear, and they told me I was stable, but I wasn't. I was drowning. My daughter would knock on the door when I locked myself in the garage. "Daddy, are you okay?" And I'd yell through gritted teeth, "Go back inside." She thought I was mad at her, but the truth was, I was scared she'd see me shaking, or worse, see the gun I started keeping in my lap. For no reason. For every reason, I didn't want to hurt anyone. Not yet, but I didn't know how not to be angry, how not to be scared, how to stop hearing it all again. The boom, the screams, the radio static. So I drank more, yelled more, slept less. Then came the eviction notice, not because of drugs, not because I was violent, but because I couldn't hold a job long enough to pay rent. There was something about being around people that made my skin crawl. Small talk felt like barbed wire. Meetings made me sweat, and loud noises don't even get me started. I started blaming the world, not just the system, everyone. I looked at families walking into warm houses and thought, why them and not me? I looked at men with desk jobs and clean fingernails and thought, they've never seen a child holding his father's severed hand. They don't deserve peace. That was when the bitterness turned into something darker. That was when the fire started. I remember the night I first saw that family. Not the fire night. The night before, I was sleeping in the alley beside their house. Cold air, stomach growling. Fingers numb. Then I heard laughter. Warm, genuine laughter. Through the window, I saw them. A mother, a father, 2 kids. They were eating pizza, watching some dumb cartoon. It wasn't what they were doing. It was how they looked safe. They looked like what I used to have. Something inside me twisted. I felt it, deep in my gut. They took it from me. Not those people exactly, but the world they represented. The world that chewed me up and spit me out while letting them live like nothing ever burned. And that was the moment, the real moment, not the strike of a match, but the moment I decided they didn't belong in that world either. That night, I held the photo of my daughter under the flickering street lamp. I remember whispering, "I'm sorry," not to the people in that house, to her, because I knew, even then, that once I crossed the line, there'd be no coming back, no more chances, no more visits, just ashes, and I chose it anyway, not out of madness, out of despair, out of rage, out of the belief, twisted and cruel, that if I couldn't have peace, no one else should either. I open my eyes now, back in the in-between, and I know the truth. The fire didn't start with gasoline. It started with silence, with a war that never ended, with a man who came home broken and was told to act whole, with a society that thanked him with parades and paperwork, but never asked, "Are you still burning?" And now here I am, a ghost, a whisper, a reminder that not all monsters are born. Some are built, piece by piece, wound by wound, until the soul becomes something unrecognizable, until the light inside flickers and finally dies. It's strange what regrets follow you into death. You'd think the worst of them would be the fire, the screaming, the smell, but it's not. The ones that haunt me the most are quieter, like the nurse who remembered my name, or the friend who kept calling after I stopped answering, or the way my wife stood at the front door one morning, car keys in her hand, tears on her cheek, and said, "Please, just come with me. Please." The first time I met Marla, she was wearing purple scrubs with tiny cartoon bones printed all over them. She worked at the VA hospital, 3rd floor, psych services. She had this voice like chamomile tea, soft but steady, like she was the only person in the building not trying to rush you out of a form or into a pill. "Brian, right?" she said the first time. "You were Army." I didn't answer. She smiled anyway. "You don't have to talk. I'll be here when you're ready." She meant it. I came in 3 times a week, just sat, watched the wall. On the 4th visit, she brought me coffee. Not the machine stuff. Real coffee, in a thermos, black, hot, no questions asked. "I figured you might need it," she said, and I did. I didn't smile, not yet, but something in my chest, tight for so long, loosened, just a little. She never pushed, just talked about the weather, about books, sometimes her cat named Truman who knocked plants off her windowsill. She wasn't trying to fix me. She was just there, and in a world full of people who looked through me like I was already dead. That meant something. Then there was Carter, Sergeant Mark Carter, served with me in Iraq. Big guy, booming laugh, eyes like weathered steel. He found me after the first arrest. Disorderly conduct, drunk in public. I was sitting on the curb outside the precinct, dried blood on my lip, head full of static. When his truck pulled up, he got out, didn't say anything for a while, just leaned against the hood and smoked. Then he said, "You don't have to do this alone, my man." I laughed, bitter, cold. "Do what?" He took a long drag, then looked me in the eye. "Lose." Carter offered me a place, a couch in his garage, said his wife wouldn't mind, said I could do odd jobs for his brother's construction firm. He'd even drive me to the site. I stayed one night. One. Then I disappeared, left before sunrise, didn't even leave a note. Why? Because being around someone who still had a life felt like suffocating. It reminded me of what I'd lost, of who I used to be, of everything I didn't think I deserved anymore. And then there was her, my wife, Julia. She tried longer than anyone. Stayed when I forgot birthdays, when I woke up swinging, when I stared through our daughter like she was a ghost. She kept believing in me long after I stopped believing in myself. I remember the night she packed a bag for me, not because she wanted me to leave, because she wanted me to heal. "Brian," she said, holding my hand, "there's a center upstate, vets only. They'll understand. Please, I already talked to them. You just have to go." I looked at her, at the hope in her eyes, and I said, "I'm fine." She cried that night, quietly, in the bathroom. Thought I couldn't hear. Our daughter drew a picture for me before school the next morning. Crayon hearts, stick figures. "Daddy feel better" written across the top. I folded it and put it in my coat. Later, when I was living in a tent behind the old church, I used that drawing to start a fire. Not because I wanted to, because I had nothing else dry. That's the thing about pain. After a while, you don't just carry it, you become it. And people trying to pull you out of the dark start to feel like enemies. Not because they hate you, but because they love you. And when you hate yourself enough, that feels unbearable. Now, in this space between, I see them all again. Marla, still sipping coffee at her desk, talking to an empty chair. Carter, scrolling through his phone, staring at an old contact he never deleted. Julia, standing outside a courtroom, holding our daughter's hand while the judge reads the charges against me. None of them say a word, but their silence screams. We tried. You let go. I want to reach out, to say, I saw you, to say, you mattered, to say, I was just too far gone. But that's the curse of the dead. You only find the right words when it's too late to say them. There's a room in my memory I never opened until now. Not a real one, a mental one, a door I always passed. Tonight, I open it. Inside every missed call, every unopened letter, every moment someone tried to save me, piled like artifacts from a life I abandoned. A voicemail from Carter. "Call me back, man." A note from Julia. "We're still here. We love you." A scribbled card from Marla. "You're not alone." I sink to my knees in that room and weep. For the first time since I died, I weep. Not because I'm haunted by what I did, but because I wasn't beyond saving. I just couldn't see the hands reaching for me through the smoke. That's what I want you to hear. If you're listening, you who feel like no one cares, you who sit alone in the dark, wondering if you matter, you do. You always did. You just have to stay long enough to feel it. Let them in. Let them help. Let them see you. Because if I could go back, if I could open that door before the fire, I'd hold their hands and not let go. I don't remember striking the match. I only remember the silence before it. The kind of silence that screams. It was the middle of January. Cold. The type of cold that gets into your bones and makes even your rage feel brittle. My tent had collapsed again. A storm the night before had soaked everything. Clothes, sleeping bag, boots. The chill gnawed at me like a hungry rat. I hadn't eaten in 2 days, but that wasn't what broke me. No, what broke me was a porch light. I had wandered to the edge of the old neighborhood, the one I used to live in. The houses there weren't fancy, but they were warm. One in particular always pulled at me like a sick joke. The little blue one with the white swing. Our house, only it wasn't ours anymore. A new family lived there. I had seen them a few times. Young couple, 2 kids, a little girl about the same age my daughter would have been by now. That night, I stood across the street and watched her through the window. She was dancing in the living room. Pink socks, big grin. Her mom clapped along to a song I couldn't hear. And her dad, he came home with pizza. They laughed, they hugged, and something in me shattered. Not because they were happy, but because I once had that and lost it. And deep down, I didn't believe I ever deserved it to begin with. I tell myself now that I didn't mean to hurt anyone. But the truth is, I didn't care. I wasn't thinking about the family inside. I was thinking about me, how they took something that once belonged to me, how the world moved on without asking permission, how it felt like the universe was mocking me, showing me everything I could never get back. I didn't have gasoline, but I had rubbing alcohol and scraps of cardboard from the dumpster behind the dollar store. I stuffed them into a rusted can, soaked them, set them near the porch. I lit the corner with a cigarette lighter I had stolen 2 days earlier from a gas station bathroom. It caught fast, too fast. I thought it would burn small, scare them, make a point. But the flames fed on the dry winter air and raced up the wooden paneling like they'd been waiting. I turned and walked away. Not ran. Walked. Like it wasn't real. Like maybe if I didn't look back, the fire would only exist in my head. But it wasn't in my head. Not when I heard the sirens. Not when I heard the screams. Not when I saw the smoke bloom like ink into the night sky. I hid in the alley behind St. Martin's, curled in on myself, shaking, and for the first time in years, I felt everything. The heat, the guilt, the terror, but most of all, the sound of a little girl screaming for her father. They lived. That's what the cops told me after they pulled me in. The fire spread fast, but the dad saw it in time. Got them out through the back door. Minor burns, smoke inhalation, but alive. I should have felt relief, but I didn't. I felt like the bullet had missed, and I didn't deserve that grace. In court, I didn't speak, not once. My lawyer begged me to plead temporary insanity. I refused, because the truth is uglier than madness. I knew what I was doing. I wanted the world to burn with me. And when the judge read the sentence, life without parole, I finally exhaled. Not because I feared death, but because I feared hope. Hope meant I'd have to face the people I'd wronged. Hope meant I might be saved. And back then, I didn't want saving. I wanted punishment. But here's the cruel irony. I didn't even get that. Because 2 years into my sentence, while cleaning kitchen floors at Lanesboro Correctional, I collapsed. Stroke, massive, no warning. One moment I was scrubbing spaghetti off a tray. The next I was staring at flickering lights on the ceiling, feeling the left side of my body go limp like a puppet with cut strings. I died before the ambulance arrived. That's how I became this, a soul that won't leave. Not because I'm cursed, but because there's still something unfinished. And here, in this strange in-between, I see the fire again, not the one on the porch, the one inside me, the one that had been burning for years, fed by war, by grief, by abandonment, by my own damn stubborn pride. I carried it like a torch through every street, every shelter, every alleyway, until the world around me caught the flame too. I wasn't a villain, I wasn't a monster, I was broken, but I became monstrous because I wouldn't ask for help, because I wouldn't forgive myself, because I thought the only way to silence the pain was to make everyone else hear it too. They say souls who die violently linger, but mine doesn't linger because of how I died. It lingers because of what I took from others. Because every time that girl wakes up screaming from a memory she doesn't fully understand, every time that father double checks every lock and light, every time that mother pulls her children closer when they hear footsteps behind them, that's me, still echoing. And yet, there's something else here now. Not light, not peace, but the memory of a choice, one I could have made if I had turned around, if I had called Carter back. If I had held my wife's hand that night and said, yes, take me there, I want to get better. If I had just opened the damn door, I think I might have lived, not just existed, lived. And that truth, that's the flame that burns me now. If you're listening, if you've ever felt the dark curling up around your ankles, if you've ever thought about setting fire to the world just to feel something, don't. Sit with it. Talk to someone. Open the door. Because the fire doesn't just burn what's around you, it burns you too. And some of us don't get a second chance to put it out. If there is one punishment greater than death, it is memory. Not just remembering, but being stuck inside the memory. Unable to change it, unable to touch it, unable to leave it. And that's where I am now. It's not the prison walls I haunt, not the burned down house or the alley where I died. It's our kitchen, the tiny one with chipped white tiles and the smell of vanilla from her candles. The radio hums a low country song she loved. She's barefoot, humming along, stirring something in a pot, wearing that same old apron that read, "Kiss the Cook." She looks young here, tired, but beautiful. The kind of tired you earn from loving too hard for too long. I know this moment. It was a Tuesday, the last morning before she packed up our daughter and left. I remember waking up late, my head pounding from the night before, beer cans scattered on the floor. I had thrown something. I can't even remember what. Probably because of some fight that didn't need to happen. Most of our fights were like that by the end. Loud, desperate, afraid. I remember standing in the doorway, watching her from behind. My little girl sat on the counter, swinging her feet, holding a spoon she'd stolen from the drawer like a magic wand. She smiled when she saw me. "Daddy's up." My wife didn't look back. She just stirred, quietly, controlled, like a storm held back behind gritted teeth. If I could step into that moment again, not as a ghost, but as a man, I would walk to her. I would put my arms around her and say, "I'm sorry. I'm ready to get help." I would kneel to my daughter and say, "You deserve better, and I want to be better for you." But I didn't. I grumbled something about coffee, ignored the bruise on her wrist, pretended not to notice the suitcase near the door, I wanted to believe she was bluffing. She wasn't. The hardest part isn't watching the memory unfold. It's that I'm part of it. I see him, the old me, slouch into the chair, turn on the TV like nothing matters. I see the way she stares at him, eyes wide with both love and exhaustion. And I see the exact moment she realizes she can't save him. It's when she quietly wipes her hands, walks over, and kisses the top of his head. Soft, like a goodbye. He doesn't even flinch. And then, I see her pack up the car, our daughter in the back seat, clutching that stuffed bear I won for her at the fair. She waves to me through the window, and I raise my hand halfway. No smile, just numb. Because deep down, I knew what this was. I just didn't have the courage to stop it. Now, I sit in that same memory over and over, begging for one more chance. And sometimes the universe grants me a mercy, a dream, maybe, or something more sacred, a thin place where souls and memories blur. Because every so often, the kitchen changes. She turns toward me. Her eyes don't look angry anymore. They look sad, like she knows I'm here, like she's been waiting for me to say what I never could. So I speak, not out loud, not with words made of breath, but from the deepest part of me, the part that broke and never healed. Marie, I was scared. I can't stop shaking. Ghosts shouldn't cry, but if they could, I'd be drenched in it. I wasn't mad at you. I was mad at myself for what I became, for how I let the war twist me, for how I let the world convince me I was only worth pain. Her hands tremble as she places a mug in the sink. You tried, I whisper. God knows you tried to love me back to life. She leans against the counter now, looks toward the window, toward a world I no longer belong to. And I failed you, I admit. I failed her. And then I feel it, this warmth. For a moment, it's like she feels me there. Like the distance between the living and the dead bends just enough for something real to pass through. She closes her eyes, places a hand over her heart, and she says, almost too soft to hear, I forgive you. That's when I fall to my knees. Or at least, I think I do. Here in this space between worlds, there's no gravity, no flesh, just feeling. And I feel it all. Every scream I never let out. Every hug I should have given. Every bedtime story I skipped. Every I love you I swallowed. And yet, she forgives me. Not to absolve me. Not to erase what I did, but to release herself. Because maybe forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. Maybe it's about letting yourself out of the cage. Then I see my daughter, older now, a teenager, in some reflection of time I can't understand. She's in her room, scribbling in a notebook, a photo of me tucked in the back cover, the one from my military days, before everything fell apart. She doesn't remember my voice anymore, but she keeps the photo, and sometimes she cries holding it. Not because she misses who I became, but because she wishes I had stayed the man in the picture. If I could speak to her one last time, I'd say, you were never the reason I broke. You were the only thing that kept me from breaking sooner. I'd tell her that her laughter used to light up places inside me I thought were dead, that every time she fell asleep on my chest, I felt human again. I'd tell her I see her now, every tear, every poem, every moment of anger she doesn't understand, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Maybe she'll never hear those words. Maybe I'll never find peace. But maybe, just maybe, those words are still worth saying. Because somewhere, in a place I'll never walk again, there are two women, one who tried to save me, and one who never got the chance to know me. And they deserve to know that even in my ruin, I remember them, I love them, and I wish I had been braver. There's a silence that comes after the screaming stops. Not peace, not forgiveness, just stillness. The kind that sits in your bones like old winter. I've wandered this in between for what feels like centuries, though time here doesn't tick. It pulses, it mourns, and now, for the first time, something changes. A door appears. I don't know from where. It just is, standing in the dark like it's always been there, waiting for me to notice. It's nothing grand, no golden light, no angelic song, just an old wooden frame, scuffed and chipped at the bottom. There's no knob, only a faint pulse behind it, like a heartbeat just out of reach. I take a step toward it, and with each step, the weight of everything I've done tries to pull me back. Every face I failed, every scream I ignored, every soul I scarred, especially my own. I feel them, not just memories, but echoes clinging to me. Regrets turned into shadows, whispering, "You don't deserve peace, not after what you did." And maybe they're right, but I keep walking, not because I've earned it, but because I finally understand what this door is. It isn't a reward. It isn't an escape. It's a choice. As I stand before it, I hear something behind me. Footsteps, soft, familiar. I turn. It's her, my daughter. But not as a child. Not even the teen I glimpsed in that memory. No, she's a woman now. Her hair longer, her eyes wiser. She walks through the memory space like she's part of both worlds, real and not, dream and echo. She doesn't see me, not exactly, but I see her. She stands at a gravestone, my name carved into it, nothing special, just a flat stone, some wilted flowers, and in her hands, she holds a letter. She reads it aloud. "Dear Dad, I used to hate you. I won't lie. There were nights I wished I could erase you completely, but now, I think I understand something." Her voice trembles. "I found your old journals, the ones from the war. I never knew how bad it got inside your head. No one ever told me." She wipes her eyes. "That doesn't excuse what happened. It doesn't bring Mom back, but it helps me forgive you. Not because you asked for it, but because I need to stop hating someone I once loved." And then she kneels, lays the letter at the base of the stone. "Wherever you are, I hope you're not hurting anymore." The moment shatters me, not from guilt, but from grace, because the one thing I thought I'd lost forever, her forgiveness, was given freely, not as a gift to me, but as healing for her. She broke the cycle I couldn't. And somehow, that breaks me open in the best way. The door hums again, low, gentle, like it's saying, "Now, you're ready." I reach out, but before I cross, I whisper, "To every soul I failed, I carry you. To every scream I ignored, I hear you now. To the man I became, I release you. And finally, to the man I could have been, I'm sorry I didn't meet you sooner." As I step through the door, there is no grand revelation, no judgment, no fanfare, only light, not the kind that blinds, but the kind that remembers, warm, weightless, whole. And in that final moment, I do not vanish. I become not the monster, not the victim, but simply the truth. Back in the world of the living, time flows again. My daughter stands from my grave, breathes in the early spring air. There's a sense of closure in her shoulders, something gentler than before. She walks away slowly, and in her heart, there's room for something new, not to forget, but to forgive, to begin again. Somewhere far beyond sight or sound, I walk forward into a place beyond names, a realm without guilt or glory, just quiet, just stillness. After midnight. Thanks for watching the whole video. Please give me a like and subscribe to the channel to watch more interesting stories.